The story you're about to hear isn't meant to be soft. It wasn't created for comfort, and it was never supposed to come out like this. This is the kind of story powerful institutions hope never sees the light of day, because once it's spoken out loud, there's no undo button, no walking it back. For years, the public was fed a clean, simple version of events, a scandal here, a fairy tale there, a fall from grace, followed by a fresh start. Neat lines, easy explanations. But behind palace walls, nothing was ever that simple. The truth was layered, controlled, measured out carefully, piece by piece. And now that control is starting to crack, a man who lost everything is no longer staying quiet. Prince Andrew has reached a breaking point. A King Charles III has allegedly made a decision so final it reshapes the royal board entirely. A future queen, Catherine, has stepped into quiet authority as the monarchy braces for what comes next. And sitting right at the centre of it all is one name. The palace never wanted dragged into this conversation: Meghan Markle. Because this isn't just about scandal, it's about silence. It's about protection, and it's about why one royal was destroyed in public while another was shielded completely. What you're about to hear doesn't just challenge what you think you know, it threatens to rewrite it. And it all begins with a fall so loud the entire world heard it. Prince Andrew didn't quietly fade into the background. He didn't step away with dignity. He was removed, suddenly publicly, and without warning. One moment, he was a senior royal. The next, his name was untouchable. The reason was clear. His close ties to Jeffrey Epstein and the serious allegations tied to that world obliterated his public standing almost instantly. The palace didn't hesitate. Titles were stripped. Duties were removed. Doors that had always been open slammed shut. This wasn't handled delicately. This wasn't buried. This was a public execution of status. The message couldn't have been clearer. When the monarchy decides someone has become a liability, they're cut loose, fast, clean, and without mercy. Andrew became the example, the warning, the sacrifice. And everyone watched it happen. The press covered every detail. The palace confirmed the fallout. Andrew's royal future didn't just end, it was erased right in front of everyone. And that's what makes the next part of this story impossible to ignore. Because while one royal was publicly destroyed over his associations, another name remained completely untouched: Meghan Markle. And this is where the story stops making sense. According to the claims, Meghan moved within the same general social orbit, the same era, the same elite world where power, money and influence constantly overlapped. And yet, when Andrew fell, nothing followed her. No investigation, no headlines, no uncomfortable questions, nothing at all. It was as if a wall of silence dropped into place the moment her name could have entered the conversation. There was no pressure from the media, no public curiosity encouraged, no acknowledgement from the palace of any kind. And silence like that doesn't happen by accident. Silence means decisions were made. Silence means lines were drawn. Silence means certain questions were declared off limits. If Andrew was punished because of who he was connected to, then the silence surrounding Meghan becomes the real mystery. Why was one royal dismantled in public while another was fully protected? This wasn't neutrality, this was control. And once you notice that silence, you can't unsee it, because silence doesn't erase history, it hides it. And then comes the claim that changes everything. According to sources referenced in this story, Meghan didn't enter the royal world as a complete stranger. She wasn't an outsider stepping into an unfamiliar system for the first time. She allegedly already knew Prince Andrew long before she ever met Prince Harry. Not a distant greeting, not a brief encounter, a personal connection. Andrew allegedly told those close to him that he had known Meghan years earlier, that their relationship was far more familiar than the public ever realised. If that claim is true, it changes everything, because it would mean Meghan didn't walk into the royal world blind. She wasn't learning the system from scratch. She was already connected, already brushing against a powerful, protected world. And that raises questions. The palace never answered. How did they meet? How close were they? Really, why was this never acknowledged? especially when Andrew's scandal erupted. If Andrew fell because of his past associations, and Meghan shared a personal history with him, then the silence around her becomes impossible to defend. Someone somewhere decided this chapter of her past was too dangerous to explore, so it was sealed. No explanations, no clarifications, no official denial, just quiet. And that quiet is where the story starts to darken, because once you accept that this relationship may have existed, everything that follows stops looking random and starts looking deliberate. And that's only the beginning. Once you step past the silence, the story doesn't move forward. It goes sideways into places most people never see. And in stories like this, places matter. One name becomes important here: Karina Shuliak. She publicly said the only times she ever travelled on private planes or yachts were when she was with Jeffrey Epstein. Those weren't casual vacations. They were controlled environments, private worlds, closed circles. That detail matters because in 2014, photos surfaced showing Meghan Markle on a private yacht. Not a public cruise, not a charity event, a private yacht, a setting that requires invitation access and trust. On its own, a photo means nothing, but stories like this aren't built on single moments, they're built on patterns. When you place that yacht image alongside Andrew's world, Epstein's orbit and elite private environments, it stops feeling random. It starts to feel connected. This isn't about accusations, it's about proximity. Proximity answers a simple question: who was allowed inside? And once someone is inside those spaces, they're no longer an outsider looking in. They're standing in the room. The yacht becomes more than a photo. It becomes a doorway into a chapter of Meghan's life that was never explained, never questioned, and never addressed publicly. And the deeper you look at that doorway, the clearer one thing becomes: she wasn't standing near the storm, she was standing inside it. Then the story moves from proximity to procedure. At the centre of Prince Andrew's collapse was Virginia Roberts' story. She wasn't a commentator. She wasn't just an observer. She was the person whose allegations carried the weight that brought Andrew's world crashing down. According to the claims in this story, Virginia didn't just want powerful men questioned. She allegedly wanted Meghan Markle called as a witness. And that detail matters. Witnesses aren't chosen randomly. They're chosen because someone believes they might know something, because they were close enough to see, hear, or understand parts of a world most people never touched. The reasoning was simple. If Meghan had a personal history with Andrew before Harry, then she might have been present in environments that later came under scrutiny. She might have seen things, heard things, or at the very least been close enough for her name to matter. And yet, when the legal pressure mounted, Meghan was never called. Her name vanished. No explanation, no denial, no clarification. It was as if that possibility had been quietly erased before it ever reached daylight. And erasing something like that doesn't happen by accident. Silence returned, thick, intentional, final. But silence doesn't erase history. It just pushes it deeper underground. To understand how all of this connects, you have to go back before the palace, before Harry, before global fame. When Meghan moved to Toronto to film Suits, she wasn't royal. She wasn't internationally powerful. She was a working actress with ambition. But ambition alone doesn't open the world's most guarded doors. Something else happened. According to the claims in this story, Marcus Anderson entered her life a senior figure connected to Soho House, a private network known for elite membership, secrecy, and influence. This wasn't casual socializing. Anderson allegedly didn't just meet Meghan, he positioned her. He introduced her to Toronto's highest social circles. From there, the connections expanded. One introduction led to another. One room led to the next. Through these networks, Meghan reportedly moved closer to wealth, influence, and international power, including figures connected to New York's elite world and eventually spaces adjacent to royalty. This wasn't overnight success. It wasn't luck. It wasn't random. It was constructed by the time Meghan's name ever entered Prince Harry's world. She had already navigated environments most people never even see. She wasn't learning how elite power worked. She had already been living near it. And once you follow that path, the yacht, the silence, the access, the next chapter becomes impossible to ignore. Because according to the claims, wasn't the first royal connection in her sights. This is where the story shifts from uncomfortable to explosive. Most people were never prepared to hear this. According to sources referenced in this narrative, Prince Harry was not Meghan's first royal connection. Someone else came before him. Someone older. Someone already established inside the palace. Someone whose access came with history, influence, and power. That person, Prince Andrew, sources allege that Meghan's initial focus was not Harry at all, but Andrew. Not as a mentor, not as a family friend, but as a romantic and strategic target. If true, it reframes everything. It suggests intention where the public was told there was coincidence. Strategy where people believed there was fate, but there was a problem. Standing between Meghan and Andrew was one woman who knew his world better than anyone, Sarah Ferguson. Fergie wasn't just Andrew's ex-wife. She was his gatekeeper, his protector, the one who controlled access to his private world. And according to the claims, she blocked Meghan from getting close enough to Andrew for anything to progress. That block forced a pivot. If Meghan couldn't reach Andrew, the path into the monarchy didn't disappear. It changed direction. And when an unexpected opportunity appeared in the form of a younger, more visible prince, everything shifted. Harry wasn't the plan. He was the opening. And once that door opened, it closed behind him forever. When Prince Harry married Meghan, he believed he had escaped the rigid machinery of royal life. He thought he had found honesty, loyalty, and someone who stood outside the system he had grown up trapped inside. At first, when warnings came from his family, he refused to listen. He defended Meghan. He cut off voices that raised concerns. He told himself the resistance was about jealousy, tradition, and control. But over time, the whispers didn't stop. According to the claims, Harry began hearing fragments of Meghan's past connections. He didn't know about relationships that predated him, names that kept resurfacing. At first, he dismissed them, then he questioned them, and finally he accepted them. That realization didn't come gently. Sources say, Harry became distant, withdrawn, even disgusted. He began to see the marriage differently, not as a love story, but as a transaction he never fully understood. If Meghan had once aimed for Andrew, and if Harry became the alternative path instead of the first choice, then love was no longer the foundation of the relationship. Usefulness was. And that realization shattered him. Isolated from his family, trapped far from home, living with questions that had no comforting answers. For Harry, this wasn't just scandal, it was betrayal. The kind that permanently changes how someone sees their entire life. But while Harry struggled in private, the palace was moving quietly in the background. From the outside, the silence surrounding Meghan's past looked strange. From the inside, it was calculated. According to the claims, the palace had 3 fears, and any one of them could have brought the monarchy to its knees. The first was Harry himself. If the full truth became public, the emotional damage could have destroyed him. The monarchy did not want a prince collapsing in front of the world. The second fear was another Epstein-level explosion. Andrew's scandal had already shaken public trust. If Meghan was shown to have even indirect ties to that same orbit, the fallout could have been far worse. 2 connected scandals wouldn't suggest isolated misconduct. They would point to systemic failure. The third fear was structural collapse. If the public learned that Meghan allegedly had a prior personal connection to Andrew and was still allowed into the royal family, the palace would look reckless, incompetent, and incapable of protecting its own institution. So a decision was made. No investigations, no statements, no questions encouraged. Meghan was protected, not necessarily because she was innocent, but because exposing her could have burned the entire system down. Silence became survival, and for a while it worked, until one man decided he had nothing left to lose. Imagine losing everything: your reputation, your titles, your future. Now imagine watching someone who allegedly shared your world, your circles, your history, walk away untouched. That is the position Prince Andrew is said to be in. According to the claims, Andrew is angry, bitter, tired of being the only one sacrificed. He believes he took the fall for a world others were also part of. And now he's ready to talk, not for justice, but for revenge, sources claim. Andrew isn't alone. That Sarah Ferguson is aligned with him. That others inside the family, including Princess Eugenie, may also know pieces of the truth. The palace worked so hard to bury, and at the centre of it all lies one buried reality, a truth that explains everything. Why the silence existed, why Meghan was protected, why Andrew was erased. If that truth comes out, Meghan doesn't just lose influence, she loses her public identity, her credibility, her royal chapter, and the monarchy itself could fracture under the weight of what it allowed to happen. Because this was never just a fairy tale marriage. According to the claims, it was infiltration. And when the man who lost everything finally speaks, the world won't just hear a confession. It will watch history rewrite itself in real time.